Hello and welcome. In the show The Lord of the Rings, the movie or the book, there's a very powerful scene where Frodo has this conversation with Gandalf. And at this time, there's kind of this danger, this dread building across the entire world. It's threatening to envelop everyone. It's a time of great fear and risk. And Frodo and Gandalf have this conversation at this time. And Frodo says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time." "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." Perhaps during this time of the pandemic, we can feel a little bit like Frodo. We could express to Gandalf that same sentiment. I wish it would not have happened in my time. But we too can hear that advice from Gandalf that is very important. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. The gospel today, taken from John chapter 11, in which Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, I think gives us some great advice about what to do with this time that we have been given. I'd like to just reflect upon 3 points. First, with this time that we have been given, we can choose to be people of compassion. With this time we've been given, we can choose to look on the suffering of others and do something about it. In the gospel today, Jesus Christ displays such compassion. We find in the gospel today what is the shortest verse in many Bibles. Jesus wept. So Jesus Christ, when he sees the suffering of Mary and Martha, when he realizes that his friend Lazarus is dead, Jesus Christ weeps. He has great compassion for those who suffer. This is the way that Jesus always behaves in the Gospels. For example, in the Synoptic Gospels, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Jesus is always looking upon the suffering with compassion. And in Greek, there's a very interesting verb that expresses this. The verb is splagnizomai, and this means to be moved in one's guts. Jesus Christ has a compassion with people that's very visceral. It moves him into action. Jesus does this in the gospel. He goes and he raises Lazarus. And all throughout the other gospels, Jesus does the same. When Jesus looks on people who suffer, he has compassion for them and he does something to help them. Jesus Christ, when he looks on our situation today, certainly looks upon us with compassion. Jesus Christ sees the suffering of the sick people, those who are dying, those who are isolated and alone, and he weeps. Jesus Christ would want us, his body, to reach out to these people, to help them. We are to show compassion for them, to weep for them, but also come to their aid. One way we can respond to the time we have been given is perhaps by considering people in our circles, people we know who are in need of help, an elderly relative we can call, a friend maybe who's struggling with mental illness that we can check up on. One way we can respond to this time we've been given is to reach out to people in compassion, to do something to help them. A second way we can respond to this time that we live in, this time of pandemic, is by choosing to be people of hope. Around us in the news each day, we hear about so much bad news. So much can fill us with fear, with anxiety. We have to choose not to let this to overwhelm us. We want to choose to be people of hope because Jesus Christ is life. In the gospel today, we're told that the raising of Lazarus is a sign. Now in John's gospel, all the incredible actions that Jesus works, whether it be multiplying the loaves or raising Lazarus from the dead, are never called miracles. They're always called signs. This conveys to us that what Jesus is doing is supposed to point to some truth. It is supposed to teach us something. So when we hear about Jesus Christ raising Lazarus from the dead in today's gospel, we should ask ourselves, what is this a sign of? And as we read the gospel, we see that the raising of Lazarus to life is a sign or points to the resurrection of Jesus, the resurrection of all of us to eternal life, the fact that Jesus Christ himself is life eternal. This is conveyed in the gospel in a very interesting way, in the way that Lazarus exits the tomb. We read in the gospel that when Lazarus comes out of the tomb, he is bound with bandages, and there's even a cloth covering his face. This is meant to echo another scene at a tomb later in John's gospel, in John chapter 20, the tomb of Jesus Christ. Now, whereas Lazarus leaves the tomb wearing his burial garments, Jesus Christ, we read, leaves his garments behind in the tomb. When Simon Peter enters the tomb, he finds Jesus' bandages lying there, and even the cloth that had covered Jesus' face rolled up and placed to the side. In this, John is signifying something very important. Lazarus, when he rises from the dead, is still wearing, or Lazarus, when he's raised from the dead by Jesus, is still wearing his burial garments. He's going to die again, so he's going to need them again. But Jesus Christ, when he rises from the dead, leaves his burial garments behind. In this, John is telling us that Jesus Christ will never need them again. In rising from the dead, Jesus Christ rises to a life that is eternal. He will never die again. And this is a great source of hope for us. Jesus Christ is eternal life. He is the resurrection. Those who believe in him will live forever. Also, we find that God can always bring good out of any evil situation. This ultimately is a source of hope for us. When we have Jesus in our life, we have eternal life already here and now. This is a source of hope, and at this time we should choose to be people of hope. Finally, during this time we've been given, we can choose to focus on what is most important. This time of the pandemic is a time for us to focus on who and what is most important in our life. We see that times of crisis can often do this. It can sharpen our attention, have us focus on what is truly important. And this happens to Mary and Martha in the gospel. So when their brother Lazarus is sick and ultimately dying, they focus on the one who is most important. They constantly go out to Jesus to seek him out. At this time of the pandemic, when all these difficulties are being encountered all throughout the world, sickness, we have so much stripped away. We can't go out, can't interact with other people. Even sometimes our life in the church is reduced. We cannot go to Mass, perhaps even to confession. So many things are stripped away from us, and this is an opportunity for us to focus on what is truly important, what is truly fundamental in our life. Perhaps some of you were able to catch the Pope's wonderful Urbi et Orbi blessing a few days ago. In this blessing, Pope Francis gave a beautiful homily to the world to inspire us, to give us hope. And he made this very point. He explained that at this time of the pandemic, so much is being stripped away from us, so much is taken away from us, and it is a time for us to focus and to realize what and who is most important in our life. And Pope Francis said the following. He addressed Jesus in this way: "You are calling on us to seize this time of trial as a time of choosing. It is not the time of our judgment. It is not the time of your judgment, but of our judgment. A time to choose what matters and what passes away." Again, Pope Francis said, it is not the time of your judgment, meaning God's judgment, but of our judgment. A time to choose what matters and what passes away. This is very important. This time that we're going through is a time for us to focus on what is most important in our life. Who is most important in our life? The relationships that matter the most. It is a time of our judgment, a time to choose what matters and what passes away. With the time that we've been given, we can choose to do this. Choose to judge what is truly important in our lives. Choose to focus on Jesus. Again, this is what Frodo said to Gandalf at this time of great difficulty in their story. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. Let us then this Sunday choose to decide with this time that has been given us. Let us choose to be people of compassion, people who have hope because we believe in Jesus Christ, who is life eternal. And let us use this time to choose and make judgments about what is most important in our life, what relationships are most important, who is most important, and to focus more and more on Jesus. God bless you and take care.